So my guest today is Andy Bryce, who is an EFT Founding Master, and he has been in this field, beyond EFT actually, for 40 years. So I'm talking to someone who's done a lot of things in that time. So welcome, Andy.
Thanks, Tania. It's great to be here. It's lovely catching up too.
Absolutely. We had a beautiful conversation before we started here, and I was thinking, I could go on with this conversation, but at some point we've agreed to have a record piece of it. So, Andy, we're talking about EFT to start off with, emotional freedom techniques. First off, how did you get into that field? What drew you to being interested in EFT?
Well, my dad was a psychiatric nurse, and we had conversations from the time I was 6 or 7. So I was always interested in how people thought, and I used to go out with him to the institute that he worked in. In those days, thousands of people were housed in buildings, but then I became interested in how people think and feel. But so I've always been open to it. In the 80s, I was doing Reiki, and I was initiated by a psychic surgeon from the Philippines. So I was doing a lot of sort of different things as we were talking about learning NLP on the side for me. But then in the 90s, I injured my neck, and for 7 years I was in pain. And one of the guys, one of the men that I been in this group with, phoned me and said, "You got to try this thing. I just saw. I just got rid of a pain in an hour that I've had for 2 years. It's just this EFT thing." And that was 2000, summer of 2000. I downloaded the manual and started tapping, and there was 2 kinds of pain, like an ice pick in here, and then a deep ache down my left arm. And they'd been there for years, and nothing touched them. And the first one left in the first half hour. And then I started working on why do I carry all my stress in my neck and shoulders, and what? So I started to open up on that. And within a month, I was pain-free after 7 years of pain. I was sold. I'm on this. And then I realized this is something I could share, that it's something that you could teach people quite quickly and they could do for themselves. And it's gone from there, from physical pain and IBS and clients like that to emotional traumatic memories and in recent years, relationships, and just, I think I've probably done a little bit of everything. That's where I started. Yeah.
So brilliant as well, because of your own personal experience. I mean, it does tend to sell you on something when you do something that works, especially after 7 years of no solution.
Yeah, I couldn't turn my neck without pain, so I tended to turn my body, and so I was 50 when I learned EFT, and I think I'm in better health now at 73 than I was then.
Yeah, the thing is, you think about that. If you've got problems in this area of your body that's restricting movement, it's only going to go worse, isn't it? Because then you're affecting all the other parts of your body, and the neck as well. It's neck's fairly narrow. There's a lot going on up here.
Well, there's a lot of good reasons there. I mean, this is the sort of bridge between the body and the head. The lymphatic system is pumping lymph, and the blood is moving things through there. So if you get tight and constricted, it's going to affect a lot of not just thinking, but possibly other organs not getting what they need. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think you probably are well fitter. Well, that's a bad way to put it, isn't it? Well fitter. Much fitter than you were earlier on, because you've freed up this constriction, but also that's a mind-opening experience, I think, as well, for someone, especially with that interest in this area. So you've gone on, and like you say, you've done many different areas. Obviously, I was picking up, you've done a lot of work in physical illnesses like IBS, etc. But now you've gone and you've done quite a bit of work on relationships. And that I find fascinating. So how did you get into that area, Andy?
Well, you know, I saw David Lake doing some of that, but I never really followed up on it for years. And then I was getting off a plane in Vancouver, and I heard this guy behind me talking to someone about he was going to do a workshop in Vancouver. And I thought, what? That's my hometown. You can't be doing workshops there. And then, so on the way out, I chatted with him, and what he was doing was working with high net worth families to open up communication so that their money doesn't disappear in 3 generations. And he'd never heard of EFT, but after 2 hours of going through customs to get another hour waiting for our baggage, he was kind of interested. And then both of us living in England, he followed up, and I started working with him. And what I saw was just how with the tapping, we could bring down the emotional reactivity of patterns that were decades old between parent and child, especially, and partners. So we started with a billionaire family in Geneva, and that was the first time we worked together, and then we traveled all over the world. But unfortunately, he died in his sleep at 47 years old.
Mm-hmm.
However, we had trained someone in San Francisco to do his part, and I worked with him in my capacity, the way I did with Mitch, with this other fellow, Richard. So what I saw was, when someone hears you and accepts you, it's such a healing. But when you're heard and accepted by the person you feel hurt you, like if it's your father who didn't do what he said he would do or whatever it was, that's amazing to watch. And I watched families come together from such extremes, ideology, religion, didn't want my daughter to be lesbian, and watching that relationship come back together so that the woman in the marriage, the daughter in the marriage to another woman, became the go-to child when other siblings of hers said, I can't get, dad won't understand. They go to her. Now she's the one that can actually talk because they healed those lifelong. One of them was 30 years and another one was 20.
Yeah.
But since then I realized that this is more important than wealthy people should just have it, and I want to make it available to any couple, any family, because when you look at you get into a relationship, you choose a partner, there are possible disappointments, there are possible emotional charges, there are things that we do that we hold on to. And what I learned from traveling the world with these two people was how often we make each other wrong.
How often we
make each other wrong. It's like, oh no, no, not like that. Oh, I don't want to talk about that now. Or what are you talking about? That's crazy. That's all in your head. Well, if that's what you want to feel, we're always doing these kind of things. And it's like, until you become, well, NLP, we filter for evidence. as soon as you see something, so what I do now is I filter for language that either makes the person wrong or how they use to make the other person wrong. And it's been helpful because some of our colleagues that I've just spoken to, when you work with one person, you have one perspective. You see the couple. Now you're seeing how that person who was in the single session is triggering the other, how they're being triggered. And then you have a much more full spectrum of what's actually going along and what's going right and wrong. So yeah, that's where I got to.
I think it's very interesting because if you're speaking with one person, they can give you such a picture of what's going on. And then you speak to the other person, it can be so different and they come across so plausible as in both sides. But then you put them together and as you say, they're firing off each other. But my thought to you, now I get the feeling you work with sometimes one-on-one, just with one of them. Would I be right?
Yeah, I still do more one-on-one than couples.
But then you also possibly also work with them both together. Would I be right?
Yeah, sometimes I'll get a couple and I'll do the first session with them. And then I suggest I do a couple of sessions with each. So I've gotten a sense of what is going on, and I've watched them for an hour or an hour and a half, and see the routines that they're so used to they don't even see, and then I address what just simply with that person, and then with the other person, and then we have some we have some basis to work together. The system we used that I was talking about that I initiated with a fellow named Mitch, we did a 2-day process, and one of the most dramatic ones is I worked with the dad we worked with him for 2 days, and then we worked with the daughter for 2 days, and then we brought the two couples together and worked with them for 2 days, and there was time in between, but they all had the foundation. They all knew what this meant and where we were going and what we were doing. So we didn't just expect to throw this together and have everything.
Well, yes, you do this. I was just imagining you there diving in and dragging them apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
how do you stop that level of friction? What strategy do you use? Because I mean, sometimes people can be very much fighting, kind of going at each other, can't they? Really?
well, yeah. There's some things that I've noticed. One is that not many, very few families that I've interacted with on an individual basis or the multi-person interaction. Not many families have a system where you can disagree safely. So we learn to either shut up or raise our voices, or we've manifested some strategies that that felt like it worked, and then they might have been developed at 5 or 9 or 15, and then you get into a relationship, but everything's so wonderful because we're in love, and then you get past the honeymoon stage, and all those strategies come back to bear. And because we're ill-equipped to actually listen to someone, well, for instance, last week I had a client in Vancouver, and he was 5 minutes late, and he was furious. He was so angry at himself. And I just listened and said, okay, if you want to feel that way, and also that, and in a few minutes, he went, oh, okay. And afterwards he said, when you heard that I was angry, you didn't stop me. It just disappeared. I felt so much better. he doesn't get that from his partner.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, don't be angry with me, even though he was angry with himself. So I don't think we are prepared to be able to deal with emotion, because we are raised with the idea that some emotions are good and some are bad. But on top of that, if you're little and someone is angry, like really raging, you get terrified.
Mm.
So we make a couple of judgments. Anger is bad and it's dangerous. So then you grow up, and if you get angry, then you're bad. So there's so many things that are dysfunctional in our regular day-to-day norm. And when you start seeing it, you can't miss it. And once you see it, you then having the compassion, sitting with a couple and having compassion for their strategies and habits and pointing them out and validating at the same time, brings down the emotional reactivity. And then we use a version of active listening. We call it perspective listening, where one person gives back what the other person says in chunks that they can do. And it's a bit artificial at first, but people it gives them the vehicle to actually communicate in a way they never have, and to be heard by someone who's essential to them.
Yeah, the active listening can be incredibly powerful, isn't it, really? Because quite often in normal conversations, we don't, do we really? You know, we push an opinion or a judgment, and it closes the conversation.
Yeah,
and shut people off. Mm-hmm.
There's things like someone uses a word and we change the word. Oh, you mean like, no, I meant that. And just watch this in the, it's not a clinical situation, but when you watch it in an isolated way, you see what we do to each other, how we resist, how, one of the things I've noticed is that some people don't want to hear you, because if they hear you, they'll have to agree with you, and they're not going to.
Oh yeah, I suppose at some level, as you're watching all these, it's almost like a games and strategies played out, isn't it, right in front of you, and bringing the cold light of day onto it.
Yeah.
Very illuminating, isn't it, really? Hmm?
Yeah, because we don't want to be wrong. We want to be right. But the thing is, what I've done is made a distinction with my clients in this situation, the difference between being right and correct. You may have the correct decision, but that doesn't make anyone wrong. Mm-hmm. But if you're being right about it, you're like rubbing a puppy's nose in the poo or the pee, you're making them wrong because I'm right. And there's a tragic fear of being wrong. I think it goes into business. I see this as a way of communication for work teams as well, because sometimes it's not safe to say what you're thinking, because what if they don't like it? What if and so I'll just shut up. So I think one of the things that individuals have always gotten, that I have tried to provide, is safety, so that they feel safe with me. And that's the feedback I've been getting, even in these groups, is that it was not non-judgmental. It was safe to be me. It was safe to say what I really feel. And it was fabulous to be heard by the person who's never listened to me.
It is a re-nurturing, though, isn't it? I always see that as re-nurturing, you creating the safety, and then them being, I mean, that just really gives a great picture, to be heard by the person who never listens. That really gives a very beautiful sense of something magic in my mind when you say that, Andy. Yeah.
Have you had, I would suspect you would have this feedback too. Occasionally I have clients who say, I've never felt heard and accepted like this before. And I think that's so nice and so horrible at the same time, because they might be 50 or 60, and that is a truth for them. They've never felt that feeling of sometimes, exposing something that they're not proud of. And I think we hide our weaknesses or perceived failures because we think we won't be accepted. But I truly believe that we bond as humans through our woundedness, and when we share our pain or something that's not a good thing, often it generates that, oh wow, I feel
Powerful.
Yeah.
And I have heard it many a time, because in my own practice, simply because I do a lot of active listening, but I genuinely do want to be present and very with the person I'm working with. And many people, and I say this to my students as well when I train them, sometimes you don't do smash bang wallop with therapy, yeah, because you start saying, oh, let's clear those emotions, and you'll get a big whoop coming up, because it'd be, even you don't want to listen.
Well, when you've had some when you've had some real traumas, and I had a client recently, and she said, I've had like so many therapists, and she said, but I can always tell when they've had too much. And she said, you just never feel like you're overwhelmed or can't take it, so I think sometimes our own struggles have given us more compassion for other people's struggles, and having the perfect life doesn't really prepare you for being a practitioner.
No, I was just thinking, you brought to mind one of my clients from years ago, and it's a very happy story. She came in my clinic and she had a blow up thing to sit on. She'd been in so much pain, and it was a very nice set up clinic, this, and we had a couch, and I took one look at her struggling, and I just said, just lie on the couch. And I said, and can I hold your hand? And I just broke her down completely. Is that compassion and the seeing, observing what she was going through. And that was a very good success story. She still sent me beautiful letters, and her husband, who she sent to me later on. And what a sense of humor that woman has, and a huge fan of EFT, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just think, you can have all the skill sets, you can have all the certifications, but if you don't have that context of safety and warmth and acceptance, people will not open up. And so I may not have all the certifications that other people have, but I've seen that I have the whatever it takes, that people seem to feel safe, and we get places that they've never been.
That is one of the key things. If you can establish safety in a therapeutic environment, it's massively beneficial. And I get that from you, Andy, because there's many factors that create safety, one of them being your tonality of voice. The other being how we communicate through expression, etc., all of that. There's also what you have going on inside of you, I think, as well, that is communicated without necessarily words, but just through everything. And people pick up on that. And as you said, kind of the unconditional, just accepting where they are right now. That very powerful. I did a counseling course once. Oh, don't tell me, serial course attend. I did, and it always stuck with me, the idea of unconditional positive regard. that you just accept a person. They may have done things that are not right
Mhm.
at any levels. They may, and maybe there's no way you could say that was right, but you accept that's the best they could do at that moment. So it's accepting the true them, yeah,
Yeah.
and then looking to help them get to the best pace possible. So it's very powerful. But my question goes right back to something you said earlier on. You had a client, the father and the daughter, who opposite ends of the spectrum here, by the way, yeah. And I think the daughter, if I get it right, was did you say lesbian?
Well, she'd been in 2 marriages with
Mhm.
men and was devastated by both.
Mhm.
Found someone and is blissfully happy in her marriage with another woman. And the parents um, live in Iowa, and
Mhm.
whether that makes a difference, I don't know. But they were very sort of the Christian right wing
Mhm.
Christian types, that exactly what you might imagine when you hear that. And when I first worked with him, talked to him, he felt that if he accepted his daughter as she was, he would be denying his religion.
So quite a conflict for him then, with his belief sets. And I'm guessing the mere fact he came to you, he wanted to have a very good relationship with his daughter.
Yeah. So he actually approached my partner at the time, Mitch, who created the sort of program that I came into at the EFT, and they were both into financial advising, and so they met through that. Um, and we did worked with the dad for 2 days in our program, and um, one of the things I asked him, I said, if did you believe in Jesus? And so do you think Jesus does forgiveness? I mean, or does he like, she's a lesbian, I can't do this. Um, and so we worked through this whole idea that loving his daughter and Jesus at the same time was impossible until it wasn't mutually exclusive. He could
Mm.
actually love his daughter as she is and maintain his concept of Christianity.
Yeah.
And then we got them together, and we had them. Yeah, we spent the 2 days with the daughter, and then a third 2 days with both couples. And so we worked with the daughter hearing dad about all this, and then the dad hearing what the daughter had against him. Because what I noticed was the judgments of the right and the judgments of the left are still judgments.
Mm.
And when we make a judgment, we are righteous. And self righteousness is a toxin, it's a poison, it just destroys things. So when they got off their righteousness about each thing, they really made the connection. And and then the second day, we worked with her mom, because when this woman was 24, she won an American national award for her music. And she
Mhm.
phoned her mom, and her mom said, "Oh, thank God. God, I prayed for you." And she said, "Oh, so it had nothing to do with the 8 hours a day I've been practicing." Click. And so that was between them for 20 years. And it took over 2 hours of conversation, hearing, being heard, going to the next one, being heard about that, and back and forth. And I was on a um, big podcast. Well, is a podcast like this just audio, or was it? I don't know. It was a big Zoom thing that the daughter is doing, and her
Yeah.
mom was on the thing. So that's how close she's there watching her daughter make a difference.
Yeah.
So that was fabulous.
And it does sound fabulous. And I kind of really love the way that you didn't try and dismiss someone's religion, yeah, and their religious beliefs. What you did is it made it that they could have both, yeah.
Mhm.
And you know, I did read somewhere, because I'm not brought up religious myself. I would regard myself as quite spiritual, though. Um, and really, that gives me a flexibility across all religions because I can accept where people are very easily. But I think it might have been Greg Braden. No, it might have been someone else who said that at the very core of most religions is love.
Yes, and when you can, when if it's not, I mean, that may be true. What I think is the core of every relationship is love, and
Yeah,
what gets in between is the fear and the doubt and the pain.
yeah,
And you know, if we've had a parent who withheld love or used love, or you know, these are things that leave scars.
yeah, absolutely. There can be strategies that people run, isn't it, really, in a way to get their own way.
Yeah, or to avoid feeling wrong again, or to
Yeah,
avoid feeling this pain or something, and because we've made meaning out of something, and then we don't want to hear anymore. Don't go any further than that. I can't. No, don't. Um, and that's just, it inhibits intimacy. And if you're going to have a relationship, intimacy is the glue. Um,
mm,
and And that's not physical or sexual. That is simply being safe with that person in a way that I can say the wrong thing, I can do the wrong thing, recover, and and we can move on rather than have it accumulate uh, to a court case.
yeah. Truth is, though, if you've got that rapport and connection with the person, they'll forgive you of loads of different things. You don't have to be perfect in their eyes. You know, there's that forgiveness that goes with that. I think they built up that rapport, that trust in each other, that kind of connection, didn't they? And I think you kind of facilitated that very well by working with what they presented there. Mhm.
Yeah, I think you know, we had to work with what we were given, and I'm giving you a few minutes really, but it was a total of 6 days,
Mhm.
long days. And actually, when I arrived into this, Mitch already had his vision of it, and we did with family, just 2 generations, but they were exhausted in one day, and I suggested, you know, I think we could make 2 days out of this.
Yeah.
You're dragging the exhausted bodies over the finish line, so we can only take so much, and
Yeah.
that's why it developed into 2 days. But
Yeah, I mean, people can develop these problems over a lifetime, can't they? And 2 days is pretty fast, clearing a lifetime of
yeah,
baggage. Mhm.
yeah, to totally change, transform the relationship that woman had with her parents and how they saw her, and the level of acceptance and forgiveness, um, you know, was so gratifying and educational, because
Mhm.
until I saw it, I knew that when people told me being heard was healing, what I saw was magnificent, because it was being heard by the person who did the thing, you know, and oh, um, now I understand how you feel, and just owning my part in it. And you probably felt devastated and abandoned and rejected, and I'm so sorry. And the person goes, you know, I believe you. I get it from what we've just done.
Mm.
I get it.
And did EFT play a big part in this, would you say, Andy?
Yeah. When I told you the mom and the daughter that they were tapping constantly for
Yeah, I thought so.
it was going
Yeah.
up and down. So we had the conversation, but what facilitated the conversation was the ability for every time the emotion rose, that they could breathe and tap, and we didn't. Sometimes we'd say, okay, let's just take a break, or bring it down. I taught them in the first morning. I taught them tapping, and for every family, and this was then one of the tools we would rely on to get through the sticky parts. And so you know, we have our triggers, and they can be a tone of voice, or they can be a word, or a look. And so having someone, um, what Mitch created a term for me in the room was second chair. So he was doing a lot of the presenting, but I was observing everything that was going on, and doing most of what everyone was doing, so that I became a part of the family, and quite often uh, would be doing sessions with individuals within the family over a period of time afterwards for individual personal issues.
Mm. Well, thank you. It's a fascinating insight into your work. And I think there's an absolute delicacy that's required if you're working in those environments. And you seem to have got that down pat, actually.
Well, there was lots of opportunity, and that particular situation, that they would have experienced judgment from,
Yes.
you know, from so many different angles. So when they told me and Mitch that they never saw or felt or a suggestion of being judged in any way, that was, you know,
Yeah, it's getting you, isn't it? It's getting you.
have I, you know, that's like reaching your
Yeah.
highest level of desire to do and to provide.
I'm feeling that. A little tear came to my eyes when I saw a little getting you there. But I mean, I just love it when something so beautiful happens, when the love comes in there. You know, it's beautiful, loving. It does sound like that's what they have now, a loving relationship.
Yes, and it's been years now. So they were, um, and the daughter had created a video. She is a part of a church in Los Angeles, and she created a video where she did a presentation as these two women, the woman she was before and the woman she was now, and how different that was. Um, so I think I'm okay to talk about what I have talked about, because she's, you know, right there to be seen on YouTube if you were in. But she's also gone on to help people with adoptive child issues, because they have one, and created a connection, and so she's doing really good work. She's a musician and a teacher of music, working with autistic children, and she, you know, I mean, how anyone couldn't just love her and to bits, I don't know, but it took a family to create the stress, but the family has overcome it.
You know, I often think that we have things happen in life, and sometimes it pushes us in a direction, and sometimes that direction is a really good direction. But then we don't want to carry the baggage anymore as well. So when you get, and it's motivated you to do good things, it's about clearing the baggage and taking the good forward. You know.
Well, that's an interesting point, because I feel like throughout my life I've watched people. Well, for one instance, several people lost children, like, you know,
Yes.
and what I observed is that some people carry that like an anchor, and the rest of their life is ruined. or they carry it like a flag and they do things that they wouldn't have done. They participate in change in the community in a higher sense. So it really is how we deal with these disasters in our lives. Are they anchors or flags? And carry that flag, we're carrying that lost child forever.
Yeah, and I think, as a therapist, it is about helping people to turn it into something more positive, and I see there with the story that you said to us, there she is helping people. I bet she's bringing some of what she learned there into that whole thing there.
She does, and she referred someone to me recently, an autistic child, and his parents, and they're doing tapping. She knows that, and so the thing is, relationship can be a legacy, and having that relationship with her and other people, you may notice it yourself that people come back, or you get a contact from someone who's been referred because of the relationship you had with someone.
Well, Andy, I'll say thank you very much for this talk. How can people get in touch with you if they'd love to work with you or find out more about your work?
Well, I have a website, tappingthrough.com.
Say that again, tapping.
It's tappingthrough.com, because I think, we tap through things. You can't tap around it or avoid it. It's just finding a way to tap through to success. So it's tappingthrough.com. Andy at tappingthrough.com.
Yeah, I'm going to spell tapping through, because once you said tapping through, I did the abbreviated version, but I'm not sure you're using the abbreviated version. So
it's through as in THROUGH.
All right, so it's the full word, tapping through, .com.
I wish I had been so brilliant as you to pick it up right away and just have a short form, but I didn't.
Well, you don't know at the beginning when you create these things, do you? Live and learn. All right, it's been absolutely fabulous catching up with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you and your lovely partner in the future. Now you've come up to my end of the country.
Well, we're only an hour away now, we keep moving north.
Yeah, well, I better catch you before you go even further north, then, aren't I, really?
Yeah, well, my dad was from Newcastle, and my mom was from Birmingham. So she was a Brummie and he was a Geordie.
Oh, mix there. Yeah, what a mix.
Yeah. So fortunately, I grew up in Vancouver, and with neither one of those. So I'm a bit different from both.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Andy, for agreeing to this conversation. And I think it's fascinating what you've shared with us today. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me here.